Okay. Murder off Miami. Video number 1 redone with extra clip art. The later videos I get really clip arty, and I decided that video 1 wasn't enticing enough to keep you coming, and I want you to keep you coming because I want you to try and figure out who the murderer is. This is a murder mystery. And there's 7 videos altogether. And I want you to tell me who done it. And if you, in video 7, in the comment section of video 7, you have to guess who done it. And I need at least 10 people to guess who done it. I will not do video 8. And I may even do it live. Let me know if you'll be here live on a Sunday or Saturday night or Sunday night to do a big reveal. But I want you to guess who done it. This is Murder Off Miami. This is done in 7 videos. And this is the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina, K-R-S-T-I-N-A. This is where I read books. No special effects, no theme music, no fancy smiths going on here. So this, originally, I think, it's original 1930s. This is a 1936 mystery. The murder takes place on a yacht, and it's off Miami. And later, it might have been a game, but I can't find any information on it. So anyway, it's Murder Off Miami. Dennis Wheatley. A murder mystery planned by J.G. Links. And it's all individual pieces of paper. Okay. So this is video 1. Alright. We get I can do this. The first video, I had a ghost. She's abandoned me today. So anyways, we have pleasure in presenting to the public between these covers what we believe to be an entirely new departure in crime fiction. Cablegrams, original handwritten documents, photographs, police reports, criminal records, and even actual clues in the form of human hair, a piece of blood-stained curtain, etc. All are contained in this folder, each in its correct order as received at police headquarters, thereby forming the complete dossier of a crime. The mystery is presented to the public in exactly the same sequence as that in which it was unraveled by the investigating officer, without any extraneous or misleading matter. A photograph of living people taking the place of the descriptions of characters which appear in ordinary detective novel. Clues to the identity of the murderer are scattered literally through the investigating officer's reports and are also to be found in the photographs, which we will include up here. On reaching the end of the investigating officer's 5th report, all of the available evidence in his hand, and he yet finds unable to solve the murder mystery. Then he receives instructions to arrest the murderer from his superior, who has never seen any of the people concerned, but reaches the correct solution of the mystery solely upon the evidence in the dossier form, exactly as is presented to you. The murderer's confession as to how the crime was committed follows, and the clues which enabled the officer at the headquarters to fasten the crime upon him. We hope that you will find the mystery a good story and wish you lots of fun in deciding who you will arrest for the murder off Miami. Okay? So, the first thing, and I'll put it up, I've scanned it, is our telegram. So I'm going to hold it here, and then I'm going to put the document here so you can see it. I'm going to scan it. This is my placeholder, and I've got no coast. Western Union Cablegram, YS Golden Gull, Miami Radio, Police Headquarters, Miami, Florida. BOLITHO, Blaine, committed suicide, stop. Returning port immediately, stop. Rock Savage. Then we get A memo. Memo to Detective Officer Kettering. Radiogram herewith passed to you for attention. Bolitho Blaine is a British financier. The yacht Golden Gull has left Miami Beach at 7 o'clock this morning, as was an hour and 3/4 out when radio was dispatched. She should be in about 10:30 p.m. Meet yacht and undertake investigation. John Nilton, I keep wanting to say Milton Schwab. Okay. Report. I didn't scan the reports. Report of Detective Officer Kettering of the Florida Police. The acting on instructions received, I boarded the SY Golden Gull from Police Launch X-21. In the company of Detective Officer Neem, Police Surgeon Jacket, Station Photographer Southwald, and Officer Gordon of the Uniform Branch. Captain Derringham received me with the owner, Mr. Carlton Rock Savage. I proceeded to the captain's cabin to take statements. Detective Officer Name acting as stenographer. Captain Dering's statement as follows, and still no coast. We sailed from New York at 12:30 p.m. on the 5th, carrying 5 passengers. In addition to the owner, Mr. Carlton Rock Savage, and his daughter, Miss Ferry Rock Savage, the passengers were Lady Welter, the Honorable Reginald Jocelyn, and Miss Jocelyn, who are Lady Welter's daughter and son-in-law, the acting Bishop of Buds, and Count Luigi Poseidon. We arrived off Miami at 2:35 p.m. this afternoon, where we anchored. My instructions were that 3 new guests would come on, and immediately these were boarded. I was to proceed to Nassau, Bahamas. And I've got a co-host who's not on camera yet. At 4:30 p.m., a Japanese gentleman, Mr. Isuki Hayashi, came on board, and at 6:55, Mr. Bartholomew Blaine, accompanied by his secretary, Nicholas Starter. The tender was cleared by 7:05, upon which I gave orders that the ship should proceed to sea. I've got a visitor. At 8:38, just after I sat down to dinner in my cabin, I was sent for by the owner to come down to the suite which had been allotted to Mr. Bartholomew Blaine. I found the owner there with Mr. Blaine's secretary. They explained to me that Mr. Blaine was missing and had left a note which gave reason to suppose that he had committed suicide. The window of the drawing-room cabin was wide open, and it looked as if Mr. Blaine had thrown himself overboard through it. And I was wondering if it was a regular window or if it was a cabin window. Because if it was a cabin window, how the hell did he get his body through one of those round cabin windows? I mean, it was probably a square one. It has to be. Oh, would you stop? I've got tail interruptus. Smoke. Would you get down? Alright, where was I? It was decided not to alarm the other passengers, so the owner said that he would just tell them that Mr. Blaine was ill and we were returning to Miami for a doctor. At 8:45, I ordered the ship back to port. Mr. Rock Carlton's Rock Savage's statement, and I will put up his photograph here. I did scan it. We had just come down from New York for a few days' pleasure cruising off the island, and I had arranged to pick up 2 more guests. Just do this. Off 2 more of my guests who could not make the yacht at New York from Miami. Mr. Insuki Hashi came on during the afternoon and had tea with us. Then Mr. Marcelo Blaine arrived with his secretary, Nicholas Sturda, just before 7 o'clock. They went straight down to the private suite, which I had allotted to them, and we sailed at once. I didn't see them as I was on the bridge with my captain when we left at 7:45. When I went down to the lounge for a drink, finding Pamela, Jocelyn, and Count sitting there, I talked with them for a while. At 7:25, Mr. Stoddard arrived and introduced himself as Marcelo Blaine's secretary. He said that Blaine wished to get some cables off before changing and asked that I would excuse him from putting in an appearance before dinner. I introduced Mr. Stoddard to Miss Jocelyn and the Count, then offered him a drink which he accepted. After a few moments, Stoddard asked me if these type sheets on the notice board in the lounge contained the closing prices of the New York stock market. And on my telling him that was so, he said that Mr. Blaine was anxious to have the latest information. He took down some of the prices in his notebook, tore the leaf out as he had not finished his drink, asked the lounge steward to take the list to Blaine's cabin. The steward came up again and said that the drawing room of Blaine's suite was locked and that he could get no answer. Steward then told him to take it down and slip it under the door. Miss Jocelyn and Count Poseidon left us at about this time, and I remained with Stoddard for a while. Later, the bishop joined us, and Lady Welter came in a few minutes after him. Then I noticed that it was already 10 after 8, so realizing that I would have to hurry if I were not to be late for dinner, I went down to change. Why do people have to change for dinner? I know it's an old European custom, but Americans don't change for dinner. They wash up, but they don't change clothing. After 8:30, I got back to the lounge to find all my guests assembled for dinner except Marcelo Blaine and Stoddard. Just as I was contemplating sending a message down to Blaine, the cabin steward came up with an urgent request that I should go down to Blaine's cabin right away. On arriving, I found Stoddard standing in the drawing room looking very pale and shaken. He said to me, "Mr. Rock Savage, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you." Then he handed me the note. All right, let's put this here. Okay. Now, I pride myself on being a really good transcriber. This was hard. And I scanned it, so I'll put it up. Dear Stoddard, you know how worried I've been all through the trip here. Day after day, I've been watching the Argosids go down on the stock market. I had hoped to pull my companies through, but things have gone too far for Rock Savage and me to make a decent deal. So I'm past it. I'm past caring for what happens to them now. This party was a forlorn hope, and I never wanted to join them. There's a thin crowd behind Rock Savage, and I wouldn't put it past them to try and do me in while I'm on the yacht. That would send Argus shares down. You without any further argument. Anyhow, I'm not going to wait and chance it. The struggle has proved too much to me. I have always watched pulling hard rather than for the nightmare. If a bankruptcy examination, I'm getting out. Like I said, I had a really hard time because it was just, if you want to take a chance at it, I'm putting it up. I've scanned it and I'll put it up. I've missed a couple words, I know it. Okay. Mr. Carlton's Rock Savage statement continued. What he says in that note about there being a tough crowd behind me is sheer nonsense. Just a wild statement of a man who was half off his head with worry. He didn't know the first thing about me personally, as we had never even met, and I didn't see him when he came on board. I never set eyes on the man in my life. We had corresponded a lot in a business way, of course, and I knew that he had been having a tough time lately. So I was hoping that this little trip with a few nice people right away from everything was just what he needed to set him up again, and I was looking forward to making his acquaintance. After I read the letter I've just given you, Stoddard handed me a slip of paper which he said the captain's steward found on Blaine's table. I saw at once that it was the page that Stoddard had torn out of his pocketbook after he had taken down the quotations of the closing prices of the New York stock market from the notice board in the lounge, and which he had sent down to Blaine earlier on. It had a few lines of writing in a different hand on the other side. Here it is. And I scanned it and I'll put it up. And that is video 1. There are 7 more videos to go. Will you solve this murder mystery? Will you be able to solve it? It's interesting, and I'm not going to reveal who done it. I can see the hints now that I know who done it. But the first time I went through this, I went through it cold turkey, like you're going through it. Oh, wait a minute. There is one more piece. No, wait a minute. Did I read this? Wait a second. There is one more piece. Okay, Mr. Carlton Savage's statement continued. I sent for the captain at once. I told him what had occurred, and he put back to port, while I sent a message to my daughter that she was to take the guests to dinner, then went up to the wireless room and sent a radio to Miami police. Mr. Nicholas Stoddard's statement. Mr. Blaine told me, and this is Mr. Nicholas Stoddard. I scanned it to put up. Mr. Blaine told me about a fortnight ago about his companies were in serious difficulties, but that his principal competitor, Mr. Carlton Rock Savage, had invited him to a conference in the United States. Mr. Blaine believed that Mr. Rock Savage's companies were in almost as serious difficulties as his own, owing to the price-cutting war which had been going on between them for a considerable time. Mr. Blaine was the big man of the British soap combine, and Mr. Rock Savage the head of the rival group in America. Between them, they could have had the virtual control of the world's soap markets, but they have been trying to match each other for months past, and neither was succeeded to date. That cost both groups an immense amount of money, and an amalgamation between them would have meant salvation to them both. Whereas if they continued their rivalry, it was quite certain that one of them would go under. Mr. Blaine accepted Mr. Rock Savage's invitation, and we sailed for the United States in Bulgaria. During the voyage, Mr. Blaine was very depressed. The steady fall in the shares of his companies caused him grave anxiety, and he told me repeatedly that if Argus Suds went below 45, he would have very little chance of pulling off a deal with Rock Savage, except upon ruinous terms, and that if Argus Suds went down below 40, there would be no chance of his pulling off a deal at all, as it would pay Rock Savage better. In that case, to let him go under. The fact that the shares of Rock Savage companies were also falling, although in a lesser degree, did not appear to console him. Blaine's depression was so great at times that I had grave doubts as to his sanity. He seemed to think that Rock Savage and his associates would stop at nothing to wreck him. He knew, of course, that his death would mean a complete slump in the Blaine interest, and although he had never met Mr. Rock Savage, he apparently regarded him as a man who might even go to the length of engineering his death in order to smash Blaine companies. He knew that his only hope of pulling his companies through was this conference on the Golden Gull. Yet he seemed to think that by going on board he would be taking his life in his hands. And it was such statements as these which made me consider him to be off his mental balance at times. He would have joined the yacht in New York, and Blaine jibed at the last moment from his fear that his life would be in jeopardy. But he pulled himself together a few hours later, and I cabled Mr. Rock Savage for him that we would fly down to join the yacht at Miami. Just before 7 o'clock, we came out to the yacht in a tender, and being told that Mr. Rock Savage was on the bridge, went straight down to our suites with the chief steward. The cabin steward came along and asked if we could unpack, but Mr. Blaine was so nervous that he would not allow the man inside his cabin. The yacht got underway just about then, and Mr. Blaine told me to change at once, and I left him. He was starting to unpack his things himself. Directly as I had changed, I returned to the drawing room and found Mr. Blaine had only unpacked a few things from his suitcase. He was sitting staring out of the porthole window. See? Porthole! Round. Sounds round to me. How do you push a body at a porthole? Um, After a moment, he sent me up to Mr. Savage with a message that he wished to get some cables off and so would not appear before dinner, and told me at the same time that I was to get the latest market prices, which had come by radio, and sent them down to him. At 7:30, I went straight to the lounge, and finding Mr. Savage there, introduced myself to him. He introduced me to Miss Jocelyn and Count Poseidon and gave me a drink. I took down the closing prices in which Mr. Blaine was interested in. These were sent down at 7:40 by the lounge steward, and who returned to say that Mr. Blaine's door was locked and that he could not get no reply. I remarked that Mr. Blaine would be changing, and this probably in his bath, so the steward instructed to slip the note under the door. Miss Jocelyn and Count Poseidon left us just after that, and I remained in the lounge talking to Mr. Ross Savage. The Bishop of Bude came in, and then Lady Welter. Mr. Rock Savage remarked shortly after that it was 10 past 8, so he must change at once, or he would be late for dinner. Um, and if he were, we were to go without him. After he left us, Mr. Hashi came in, the Count Poseidon. At 8:30, Miss Jocelyn, having changed, returned to the lounge with her husband, Mr. Reggie Jocelyn, to whom she introduced me. It was after the dinner bugle sounded that the cabin steward came up to the lounge and handed me a note that Mr. Blaine had left for me. Having read it, I hurried below with the cabin steward. We found that Mr. Blaine's suite was empty and the window of his drawing room wide open, so it looked as though he had thrown himself out into the sea. It was then the steward picked up a piece of paper from the writing table, which I recognized at once as the leaf from my pocketbook with the share quotations on it. I saw the line of writing in Mr. Blaine's hand containing his last message on the back of it. I sent the steward up to get Mr. Rock Savage at once, and then I immediately told him what had occurred, and he sent for the captain. This business has been a great shock to me because, although I have not been in Mr. Blaine's employ for long, he always treated me decently, and I had got to be fond of him. I don't think there is the least doubt about it being a case of suicide. Big business people may use unscrupulous methods at times, but it's stretching things a bit too far to suggest that they actually murder one another. I think Mr. Blaine's fear for his life was brought on purely by overstrained imagination, and realizing that his last hope of saving his companies had disappeared when the Argus Sud shares dropped below the 40 level. He decided to make an end of himself rather than face the music. Statement of Silas Ringbottom, cabin steward. Just before the ship got under way, the chief steward called for me and said, "Ringbottom, the 2 new ones that are allotted to Sweet Sea have just come aboard. Getting along at once and settled them in." I went to see drawing room and knocked on the door. The secretary opened it and asked, "Shall I unpack, sir?" And he replied, "No, that's all right. We're unpacking for ourselves." So I went back to my pantry. I did 1 or 2 odd jobs, a bit of pressing and so on, and then I sat down for a half-hour read, while the guests were changing, until the dinner bugle sounded at 8:30. I then proceeded to my duty of tidying the cabins. Sweet Sea, that is Mr. Blaine's nearest. I meant to start on him, but I found the door of the drawing room locked, so I just unlocked the door with my master key and went straight into the room. The first thing I saw was a note addressed to Nicholas Stewart, Esquire, and marked urgent in capital letters. I thought that's a bit funny, as if Mr. Blaine had gone up to dinner. Why couldn't he have taken it up to Mr. Stewart himself? But it's not for me to question the why and wherefores of the guests, so I took it up to Mr. Stoddard right away. He just thanked me and tore it open. Then, as I was leaving the lounge to go below, he came hurrying after me and said, "I'm afraid something's wrong, Stewart." I went down to the late lamented cabin together and had a quick look around. He wasn't in the suite, and the drawing room window was open. Mr. Stoddard told me that he was afraid the poor gentleman had chucked himself overboard. Then I spotted a bit of paper on the writing table and gave it to Mr. Stewart, saying, What's this here?" He gave it a glance and sent me up to get Mr. Rex Savage immediately. I did as I was bid, and the owner sent for the captain. Detective Officer Kettering's report continued. Having taken statements from Captain Daring, Mr. Rock Savage, and Mr. Studdard and the cabin steward Ringbottom, I then proceeded to Suite C, which had been allotted to Bartholomew Blaine. It consisted of a drawing room, a stateroom, and a private room. On the other side of the drawing room, there was a single stateroom, which I am told had been allotted to Stoddard in order that he might be near his employer. A cursory examination of the suite showed nothing which called for special remark. Captain Darrington told me that he had locked up at 8:45, ordering the ship back to Miami, so that nothing in it had been touched or disturbed since the steward Ringbottom had discovered Blaine to be missing. I instructed station photographer Southwood to take necessary shots of the suite and decided to postpone a detailed examination until morning. Soon after arriving on board, I told Police Surgeon Jacket, as the case was of man overboard, his presence was no longer needed. At 12:50, station photographer Southwood had completed his work, upon which I had Suite C relocked and placed Officer Gordon on guard outside him. After which I went above and spoke to Captain Daring and Mr. Ross Savage. The photographs of the cabin will be shown in video 2. I told the latter that I did not think any useful purposeful could be served by keeping his guests out of their beds longer, but that as a formality I should have to question them in the morning, so none of them is to be allowed ashore without permission. In my view at the moment, this looks like a plain case of suicide by a man in a financial jam. Blaine's innuendos that Rock Savage intended to do him in are discounted by the statements of his secretary Stoddard, who appears convinced that for some days past Blaine was not of sound mind and suffering from a prosecution mania. Captain Derringham's a fine, straightforward, if rather silent fellow, and certainly not the man to permit any monkey business upon a ship commanded by him. Rock Savage's manner is normal, and he appears surprisingly upset by the tragedy, although it should be noticed that he stated that this was only a pleasure trip, whereas it made abundantly clear from Stoddard's statement that its real objective was to cover a business conference between Rock Savage and Blaine. On the face of it, all the guests are apparently respectable people of some social standing, and Captain Derringham gives me his assurance that no new men have been brought on in the crew this trip, or employees of Rock Savage for any special purposes. Apart, therefore, from Blaine's innuendos, there is no evidence at all to support any suggestions outside the known facts, and in my view, it is a plain case of suicide. I'm sending station photographer Southward ashore in the yacht's launch, and also Detective Officer Name, who will deliver this report. I then propose to sleep the night on board in a spare cabin which Mr. Rock Savage has placed at my disposal. Please instruct the Coast Guard stations to keep a lookout for a body in the unlikely event of it being washed ashore. Detective Officer Kettering. And that is the end of video 1. Like I said, the cabin photos will be shown in video 2. The reply from his boss will be shown in video 2. There's an outline of the yacht that will be shown in video 2. So there's a whole bunch more information coming. There are 7 videos in all. So, like I said, I'm not going to reveal who done it until at least 10 people put an idea or suggestion in the comments in video 7. And don't forget to check out Star Trek recaps on Fridays, JD Rob Saturdays, unboxing Sundays, or ARC Extravaganza. I'm alternating. Those are brand new authors who have never been published before. Flashback Mondays, and of course my daily book reviews. But of course the next 2 weeks are filled up with Murder Off Miami. Have a good one.